everything I've been up to. I'm carrying on with a comment from where I left off, because this was quite a long comment, so that's why I'm kind of like spending quite a fair amount of time on it, because I thought it raised some really interesting questions. So this commentator has severe contamination OCD, similar OCD to what I have. It's actually pretty much the same type of OCD, isn't it, as what I have, because we're both like terrified of COVID and germs and contamination. So we both have very severe OCD around contamination and germs. Your primary diagnosis though is ADHD, so other than OCD, you have a diagnosis of ADHD, which was given to you recently. You're not diagnosed autistic, whereas for me, I have a diagnosis of autism, and I also have OCD. And yeah, so this comment then, you were talking here in your comment, this is what I thought was really interesting, that you clearly have quite a large number of very significant autistic-like features. So you say you have lifelong difficulties in social interaction. That was first noticed in nursery school, when I advised your parents to not send you anymore as you weren't interacting and you found it distressing. You also have a very routinized life. You need routine. You're strongly obsessive fixations on topics of interest. You have repetitive behaviours. You have sensory difficulties. And as you say, you do seem to have a strong similarity to autism. However, you don't, as far as you know, have significant social communication difficulties. So you don't have trouble reading body language, facial expressions, prosody, although you do have a discomfort with eye contact, a tendency to monologue, and you find it very challenging in relationships for things to be in any way other than in your terms, but you're not sure if that's a social communication problem or just an interaction one. You say this could be explained by a combination of your ADHD and OCD, or perhaps you are some sort of sub-threshold case. So yeah, that was really interesting, and I was thinking about that, and it definitely seems like you do have a very large number of autistic features. Obviously, I'm no expert. I can only speak about my own experiences, and only a psychiatrist or psychologist specialising in autism would be able to kind of analyse it, and like you bring the evidence to the table, and then they would be able to tell you whether or not you also meet your criteria for autism. I mean, it is possible, it's possible, but like you say, you don't feel you have the social communication problems, as far as you're aware. So yeah, but as you say, those other features affect you in a significant way. Out of interest, have you actually looked at the criteria for autism spectrum disorder, just to see if you feel that you meet enough of them to maybe consider getting assessed for it, just out of interest? Because you already have a diagnosis of ADHD, I guess it depends whether or not you feel that diagnosis is sufficient, and whether or not the other features are impairing enough to warrant getting assessed for autism as well. I mean, obviously autism, it affects people in different ways, and difficulties reading other people's faces and body language is one of the features often seen in autistic people. But then again, I mean, I do know, I mean, it's all changing now, isn't it, with all the so-called New Age autisms. I do know some people at some of the groups I go to who say that they don't have any problems reading body language, and they've been diagnosed autistic. So, I mean, I struggle with body language, I have the full works, but all I'm saying is I do know that there are some people diagnosed with autism who have come to some of the groups I go to, who say that they don't have difficulty reading body language and have still been diagnosed autistic. So, I mean, it seems like the landscape is changing, so it's possible you would actually be above threshold in today's new climate. If anything, you seem like you have far more traits of autism than many of the so-called New Age autistics who come to some of the groups I go. So it's possible you are, but obviously, like I say, I'm not an expert, so I can't say either way. And as you say, it's possible that it's possible that they could be better. I mean, if you look at ADHD, and again, I don't know too much about ADHD, I know more about autism, but I do know that there is a high degree of overlap between ADHD and autism, and that the vast majority of autistic people do have at least some features of ADHD, at least in childhood. and even if they don't meet the full criteria. And my guess is that likewise, many people, not all, but many people with ADHD will have some features seen in autism, such as social difficulties, etc. I guess the question is for cause though, isn't it? Because similar features can have different causes, and I guess if you did look at going into assessment, a question to try and separate it out from ADHD, I guess in ADHD the problems with social interaction can be more explained through impulse control and difficulties with inhibition, so like butting into other people's conversations, not being able to hold back. These can all present in ADHD and like be social problems, whereas in autism the difficulty is more down to difficulties reading other people's thoughts and feelings, theory of mind, problems with empathy. Yes, it does exist, despite what the NDM say. Difficulties with, I think it's cognitive empathy, so theory of mind, and things like that. There can also be issues around inhibition and impulse control as well, because like I said, there is a high degree of overlap with ADHD, but the main difficulty in autism is theory of mind, whereas the main difficulty in ADHD is executive dysfunction, impulse control. So both conditions can have social difficulties, but for different reasons. So again, you might have, say, symptoms overlap with autism, but the question is, like you say, it could be better explained by your ADHD. Like I say, the only way you can know for sure is to see someone trained specialist in autism, and maybe you might consider doing that, but it depends to what extent you feel you would benefit from knowing for certain, or whether you're just happy, just seeing, just happy as things are, as I say. So again, you also say that if it's not clinically impairing, if the traits are not clinically impairing, you feel that we need a new personality construct, but it needs to be kept separate from diagnosable conditions to avoid trivialisation. So again, I agree, it must always come down to whether or not a condition is clinically significantly impairing. If it's not clinically significantly impairing, it's not a condition. It should be as simple as that, really, shouldn't it? I guess the question there is, what is clinically significantly impairing? How do we define what is clinically significantly impairing? How do you define that? Again, that's a philosophical discussion. I would say it should be, like I said, across multiple contexts. There should be evidence that the condition is kind of hampering the person's life in some way, be it, say, socially or occupationally or in other areas where the person is being held back because of their condition. In some way, they might need extra support to be able to do things that people without the condition wouldn't need support with. That's a sign of being clinically significantly impaired, isn't it? If you can just do things the same as everyone else and it's not holding you back, and you can get what you need in life and do what you need to do, and and then it's not an impairment, I suppose. I guess the question also is whether or not subjective feelings of impairment also count. So say if someone can go out and objectively do things but is experiencing great internal distress, does that count as impairment or not? So that's the philosophical quandary as well. That will take a whole other video, of course. I guess in autism the main issue comes down to social impairment, though, doesn't it? And this can be tested, by the way. There are tests that can test this. So like the test I had when I was a kid, those sort of tests draw out these impairments, and that can show that there is an objective impairment going on, even if a person is appearing to hold it all together. There are tests that can be done that can really bring out these impairments, because there are neurocognitive tests that can be done. So that's the other question: does the person need to show evidence of impairment on the tests as well? Because not all autistics do. Again, this is the question. This is a whole philosophical minefield, isn't it? There's endless questions here. This is philosophy, this is ethics, this is this is just to go on and on. The other one about finding partners and stuff and dating and all of that. One of you says you found all of your girlfriends on a dating site. And this is why you've dated a lot of middle-aged bipolar teachers who bond quickly, are passionate, quick to move in, and are opposite to those on the autistic spectrum. So that is interesting. You seem to gravitate towards bipolar women because they do tend to kind of like move in, and they're more quick to move in. Maybe they don't think so much, and they don't have such a kind of an analytical. They're not analysing things so much. So maybe they maybe someone with autism maybe might find it easier, maybe because if they're like really kind of passionate and just want to have someone, they're maybe less likely to kind of think, oh, this person's a bit strange. So maybe that's why you find it easier to have relationships with bipolar women. I don't know. One of you says your thoughts. Oh yeah, they want to know my thoughts on autism being a chemical imbalance or treating autism with chemicals, anything to fix autism. That will take another video, so I'm not going to be able to cover that here, but it's something I will think about, and I'll see if I can answer it. I guess the quick answer is that autism, to my knowledge, currently does not have a cure. But yeah, I'll see if I can come back to that. We'll see if I can come back to that. And another one of you says, with regards to relationships, that you're not able to manage on your own. Your husband is a carer and you met on a dating site. You met and moved in with him straight away, and you think that your husband might be a border autism phenotype, so as he shares many traits with you, he is unusually patient, you both share similar interests, science, geeky interests, that sort of thing. So that was interesting. Thank you. It does seem that dating sites might possibly make things a little bit easier for autistic people. Going to say meeting in the wild. I haven't really had any success on dating sites because I really don't understand how they work, but something to think about anyway. But yeah, I'll come back to those, and thank you for watching.